Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Another part.
All right, guys.
Thomas just pointed something out that was missing on the schedule. Apparently, I didn't have the exercise for the slider actually here due this week 9. I should have had this in here, right? So, did everybody get the image slider thing up and running with the widget boxes? Thomas, did you start grading stuff, or you did? Okay. So sorry if I, bless you, didn't have that in there. So, so we're here in week 9. We are going to do the exercise to make the website responsive this week and next week. So we'll see how far we get today, but it most likely will run probably halfway, maybe even all the way through next week. And then finals week, you guys probably have enough to do during finals week, right? So no need to show up here. I guess if anybody is desperately needing help, Thomas, or would you be open to if people need help showing up and coming here, and I would do the same thing? So in other words, put it this way, if somebody puts out a SOS, we can show up during finals week, the week of the 16th at the same time. If nobody puts out an SOS to meet us here, then I don't know. I've stopped drinking beer, really. So, but we'll see what I can do. So then make your website responsive will be due at the same time before that class time would be during that week. Does that make sense? All right. So make your website responsive. What does responsive mean? Well, if you have looked at the syllabus and you have purchased the Ethan Marcotte book. How many of you purchased the Ethan Marcotte book, right? I didn't put down chapters to read out of it. I got one email about, hey, what chapters? And my response was the whole thing, but it's a real easy read. Let's see, required text, responsive web design by Ethan Marcotte. So this book, this author is the one that coined the term responsive design, okay? So what does that generally mean? Well, you may have heard the terms mobile design, right? We've all heard probably that term. How many of you have heard the term responsive design? Okay, most everybody, okay? So mobile design, I think more in terms of applications, right? That you download and use on your phone or your tablet, right? Where responsive design mainly refers to website design that then so if I inspect this, there is a mobile view in Chrome that I stopped using for a while because I didn't think it was really all that great. I don't even know. Top left corner, that's where it is, yeah. See, I don't even really use it much anymore. I've always felt that the one in Chrome here was kind of buggy, right? And as you would come in here, right, it takes a long time to render, etc. The one in Firefox I thought worked much better, right? So instead of using the responsive design view and then saying, you know, hey, look at this for an iPhone 6, right? Now, it does a good job in terms of if you need to know what the viewport resolution is for an iPhone 6, you can select that from the device and it'll say screen 375 by 627, okay? So have any of you heard the term viewport? Okay, so what viewport refers to is not how many pixels per inch there are, right? So let's say in the traditional web world, how many pixels per inch are we used to working with? 72, right? Since devices now are, I don't even know like what the Retina screens are up to these days, 11 billion pixels per inch probably, right? So what the viewport refers to is not pixels per inch anymore, but my understanding is if it was 72 pixels per inch, how tall in portraits, how wide in portrait, or how tall in landscape, how wide in landscape. So the Apple iPhone 6 is then 375 wide, and my scrolling on my mouse broke, so I can't scroll, and 672 tall. So, like I said, I have a tendency not really to use that much anymore, and instead to see where my breakpoints are. I've done one or two things. On my school site here, if you can see it on the projector up there, can everybody see the numbers up here? Well, that is me demoing the viewport as you come in like this. But if you have the inspector open, right, in Chrome, look up in the top right-hand corner. It will start to show you the width of the viewport at, again, my understanding, 72 pixels per inch. We generally don't necessarily care about what the height of the viewport is, right? Why don't we really care about what the height of the viewport is? People go scroll anyway, right? So does anybody remember way back in the day where scrolling, making websites that you made people scroll was taboo? Keep it above the fold, keep everything above the fold. Well, that proved to just not be true. People were very used to scrolling when they were reading articles, right? Does anybody remember the days where you had like the little frame of text that showed you 5 lines of text at a time? Some of those, right? Good, you don't remember. Just forget I ever said anything about it. Right? But what responsive refers to is my website here is a fixed width center design at desktop, right? Well, what does that really mean? Well, because I'm still using the 960 grid, and I like the 960 grid. The 960 grid has never done me wrong. I have had students that have tried doing I think it's the 1220 grid, but one way, shape, or form, if we, let's go to a link on this page. So if we then talk about what the viewport is, there is a bunch of links that I have put on my lecture size. One of them is the W3 Schools link here. So responsive web design, the viewport. So if we click on that, it basically goes through, well, what is the viewport? So this is where then, come on. if we didn't put in what we're going to do here in a few minutes is we're going to need to place this meta tag, right? That is commonly referred to as the viewport meta tag because it is a meta tag name, viewport content width equals device width, initial scale equals 1.0. Well, what that generally does is, here is a screenshot without the viewport meta tag, right? And you can see that, well, let's say it like this. How many of you, when you go, like, let's just give a scenario that everybody probably knows. You're on Facebook on either your tablet or your phone. Who does that? Just about everybody, right? And you see an article from whatever website, and you go to that article, and the website is not responsive, right? Meaning it's still a fixed width for a desktop monitor at 1024 or above. So if you're looking at it on your phone, then it will try to render all 1024 wide pixel design within your screen, right? And what do you end up doing? You have to pinch zoom in to read the text. Everybody knows what I'm talking about? We've all had that experience? Great. So with the viewport meta tag then, if our site then is responsive, we would see the device width to whatever viewport is and snap to initial scale 1.0, meaning, right? If we looked at it, it would be, again, if I was on a phone and the phone viewport was 483 wide, I would see 483 pixels at 72 pixels per inch of my design across the viewport of the device that I'm viewing. Does that make sense? Okay. So then the term responsive applies to, again, well, if we have a design on the web that somebody is looking at it on their desktop, like all of you are on your laptops, and some of you may have my website up on your computers right now, and if you do, you see a pretty much traditionally laid out web design that we have followed in this class, where we have our header, we have our navigation, we have a column for copy or text, and we have a sidebar that contains sub-navigation and possibly some widgets like the calendar items, YouTube videos, latest Flickr photos, advertising, so on and so forth. But what happens to this when we look at it on a tablet, let's say? Okay. How many of you have an iPad? What is the resolution or viewport of an iPad? 768. Okay. So I have an iPad mini, which I love because it's smaller than a regular one and it feels more like a book, right? 1024, 768, okay, is the viewport. So if I was reading, looking at my school websites, let's say this lecture, and I was looking at it in portrait view, or let's say landscape view, 1024. So if I have the inspector open, I will then, if I have the inspector open, up in the top right-hand corner, I will start to see the viewport. And if I come into 1024, this is what I would see in landscape view of my iPad. right? How many of you have an iPad know what I'm talking about, right? Most everybody. Who in here does not have a tablet? Really? Okay, I thought they just came stock issue, these tickets, right? But if I had this at landscape view, it would look like this. If I then flipped my iPad over and looked at it in portrait and we came into come on, 768, we would notice that a few things have changed, or the design has responded to the viewport, hence the term responsive design. So what has changed? Well, in this one, the navigation has hidden itself, or not necessarily hidden itself, but is presenting itself in terms of a, you tell me, common navigation convention? Yeah? True, okay. The good old hamburger design. Open up the navigation, see sub-navigation in there, right? See our main items, see our sub-items, so on and so forth. If we close that, we then would see the content of the site all the way out to the edges of the viewports. What happened to the sidebar? At this viewport, the sidebar has not disappeared, but the sidebar has snapped down to the underside of the content, right? If we go in further, let's say at, I don't know, whatever phone resolution, let's take a look at the videos right there. What I've done here is the thumbnails for the videos, I lost them. At 800 pixels, or the viewport of 800 pixels wide, I have 4 videos across. As we are coming in, the thumbnails are responding to the grid movement. As well as we come in, more, all of a sudden, instead of 4 across, we have 3 across. Now, I could go so far in terms of if and when it snaps to 3 across, why am I still presenting 4 videos? Because I haven't gotten around to, nor is it cost effective for me to take the leap and do it. In other words, I would have to see with the plugin that I'm using, I would have to sniff to see about if I can feasibly do that. You know what I'm saying about the cost effectiveness, right? Heuristic evaluation. Is this high priority, low priority? I'm going to say 6 videos at this resolution. Very low priority for me, right? So, coming in, we may or may not see it 2 across, okay? So basically then our design, our grid, our layout, our whatever you want to say, responds to the viewport, and we make design decisions given the viewport resolution, okay? So same thing, if we go all the way back up to the top of my website, you can see here that at 400 pixels across, I'm using a 2-column grid. And as I come out wider, it goes to a 3-column grid. As I come out even wider, it goes to a 4-column grid. And even wider, it then snaps to the 12-column grid. Okay, make sense? All right. So how do we do that? Well, if I look at the style sheet, or let's go to, because we were using my school example, let's just go to that in the good old GitHub. So if I, for instance, I don't know, go to my sidebar, how much markup will we see there? You won't see much markup. Let's go to then the style sheets and say it like this. So at normal view, okay, or at desktop. Now, you may have heard, how many of you have heard the philosophy? I'm sure all of you have heard the philosophy, mobile first, right? So again, there is the, you should always do mobile first. True or not? Yeah, I don't like people that are so that rigid, right? I think that you are just a blanket statement like that is kind of dangerous. A better statement would be, well, take into consideration mobile first and also take into consideration desktop down, okay? So in terms of responsive design, again, what I found on the W3C, the W3 schools, if we scroll through these chapters here, is so responsive web design grid view. So what is the grid? Again, we have implemented a 12-column grid in our website. So one could then, so in other words, if we look at this, we can see we have something that is one column that goes over the 12 columns. We have something that goes over 3 columns. We have something that goes over 3 columns. We can then theoretically, so let me point this out. We're not going to do this except for our images, right? Because if we put borders and padding on our images. But just know that if and when you get to doing this more hardcore for a living, if you start being a front-end web developer, you might want to consider changing the box model to this, box sizing border box. I already mentioned that, haven't I? Right? Where the traditional box model puts padding on the outside of the element. In other words, if we want to go over 980, we have to say width 940, padding left and right 20. If we change this box model to box sizing bordered box, now the padding comes on the inside of the box model. So we would say width 980, padding left and right 20, right? So this is the box model that Bootstrap and Foundation have adopted. So Bootstrap and Foundation, people heard of Bootstrap and or Foundation, right? So Bootstrap is probably, I would say, the most common CSS framework, right? But nonetheless, we're just going to do that on images. We could then start saying, well, column 1, or if we are going to just have something go over 1 column, meaning the 60 pixels, right? We could say width 8.33%. If we have something going over 6 columns, we could say width 50%. Okay? We could also do this. One of my things that I have fallen in love with is, well, today what we're going to do is we are going to, when we get to the gutters and the margins on the outside, we are going to make those margins flex. But what if you want, so again, the 12-column grid up top right there. What if you always want those 20 pixels margins and 20 pixel gutters? What if you don't want those to flex? You just want the columns on the inside to flex. Does that make sense? There is another setting that you could use, So if we come down to here and I have a 4-cross grid and I say inspect, and I hover over one of these list items. Come on. I am saying then, this list item right there is a width of 25% minus 20 pixels, meaning that the column on the inside flexes, but the 20 pixel gutter does not. I don't know, I've geeked out on that. I kind of like that, right? So these are all a whole bunch of different ways to kind of basically work with your grid. There are many grid systems out there. Like I said, if you are going to use something like Bootstrap, which, truth be told, Secret Santa, I've never used Bootstrap myself, because the sites that I've worked on, I built by hand way back in the day, and it still hasn't let me down. It's been an evolution, right? You've used Bootstrap, Thomas, haven't you? Good, bad? Fair enough. From an expert user, right? Bootstrap then has built into it these columns in its CSS already, right? Again, if we move on, and we say next chapter, my theory that I was talking about was you will get people, designers, test your friends, see what they know. You might get people that say, always design mobile first, right? Well, yeah, okay. That's kind of myself. I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say that's kind of an egotistical statement of you know everything about the world, right? Some people subscribe to that, great, good for them. I think to myself, well, again, mobile first, desktop down, right? In other words, mobile phone up to desktop or desktop down to mobile phone. It's still responsive any way you slice it. What I have seen myself is that when people design mobile first websites, they just don't care about desktop. Here's what I mean. I may have brought this up on the screen before. And again, 100%, this is my egotistical opinion. Okay, that's on recording. So, oh, they changed it on me. Damn you. Did they really change it? They did. Ah, you guys, when you have bad design, leave it so I can use it as an example. Damn it. Well, if you went to List Apart even up to like a few days ago, they presented at desktop that graphic that went all the way down to almost the fold or beyond. So if you're a Jacob Nielsen fan, right, and you have to be a Jacob Nielsen fan just for his hair, right? So if you're a Jacob Nielsen fan, you may have heard of one of his principles of, well, if I'm designing something that goes below the fold, like a big spotlight that goes below the fold, you know what I'm talking about. It looks finished. I don't know there's content down there. That's my problem with mobile first, right? Is that when people are designing for mobile first, their designs look like a big phone or tablet version that they are displaying a very long design. Well, you cut that in half, and all of a sudden your fold cuts that in half. If you can't see that there's content below the fold, you don't know it's there. It breaks that usability principle. So again, that's my only beef with mobile first design. I'll say that. And they heard me say it probably on video, and they changed it. Huh?
Now you can see the stuff going.
Yeah. They, man, I count on you guys to have, did anybody go to this website and know what I'm talking about? No, probably not. Well, so there are then two philosophies, right? We can, when we are doing desktop down, let's say, we can start to say, using media queries. So how do we get things to change at different viewport sizes? We use what is called the media query. So a media query basically says, remember when we put in our style sheet and we said media all? Who remembers that? Okay. So we could have said media screen. We could have said media print, right? But instead of, let's say, again, has anybody tried to print my lecture notes out? No? Everybody's like, we have our stuff there. We don't need to print it out. Well, if you ever did, and we looked at my style sheet, down at the bottom of the style sheet, you would see a media query for print. Okay, which basically says, for media of print, if you are going to print this out, then the grid, the header, the navigation, the sidebar, the comments box, all display none. So, how many of you have ever printed out something from a web page and you see the navigation, the sidebar, the header, and everything instead of just the content? Well, this is what my website, my school website, looks like when it's printed out. So again, for those of you watching at home, so Victoria, if you're watching at home, you can't see that I'm holding up my printout of my lecture, right? She's the one that I was talking about that was like watching it live. We could also then say media screen and max width 400 pixels. So anything below 400 pixels, do that. So again, what I am doing, because when I first did this website, it was back in the pre-responsive days. So I had a fixed width. Come on. You can see my style sheet is not very long at all. So what I had was, I had a fixed width website that then I needed to convert to responsive. So that's kind of what the Ethan Marcotte book talks about, how you do that, okay? I wrote this tutorial article for one of my classes at Seattle Central back in, you can see, February of 2013, back 3 years ago when responsive design was actually hitting pretty hard. And basically, if you then have a fixed width 12 column design, what do you do with it? Well, you basically start saying, okay, great. Well, as somebody comes below 1024, right? That's your standard breakpoint for, like I said, an iPad, or the lowest common denominator now on a desktop monitor. So that's typically why I use that, what we call breakpoints. Okay, well, start changing things to percentages here, right? Start then, for those thumbnails, right? For Flickr and TubePress, that's where we start saying, okay, make it 50% minus 20 pixels. Okay, so you still have the 20 pixel gutter, right? Down below 800 then, nav items, display none, right? So that's where at 800, you see my traditional horizontal top across the center navigation disappear, and also text align left. Then the list items, instead of being in line next to each other, it's the same markup, just displayed differently at different viewport sizes. So instead of them sitting horizontal across the center, they now go back to being block level items, right, and stack. So that's kind of the desktop down version, okay? The other version is, instead of saying max width, you can basically say min width, right? So that means whatever design you have for phones, and then as you go up to desktop, that's the mobile first approach to the media queries, okay? We are in this class going to do desktop down because, well, we've already built a desktop looking site because that was traditional web design up until 3 years ago, right? So, does that explain the theory behind it well enough? Any questions on that theory? Yeah.
So what we're looking at right now says design for mobile, and then once you hit 768, those things start to apply, and those are percents
Yes.
bigger than that?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the way I understand it. Versus desktop, and as you go below 768, you do something. So this says above 768, you do this, right? So at above 768, that's where, again, the 12-column grid is a traditional grid for desktop design, or let's say it like this. As you start coming in, look at that 12-column grid now. The columns are starting to get real skinny, right? And so it is not likely that you are going to have any element that goes over just one column, or 2 columns for that matter. 3 columns, yeah, because then that would be, 1, 2, 3, 4 across. So therefore, as things start getting down about here, that's where then the grid changes. So instead of a 12-column grid, well, it's still a 12-column grid, but it's just a 12-column grid divided into 4 pieces. Does that make sense? It is then a 12-column grid divided into 3 pieces. I'm just not showing you the 1, 2, 3, 4 columns in the first, right? Does that make sense? So I'll be honest with you. Again, I'm going desktop down like this because I'm an old fart set in my ways. It's worked for me thus far, and nobody's ever complained. So, right? But again, I've showed you the other way of doing it, and now you know, and you can explore that on your own, right? So what we're going to do now is, first and foremost, the first step then is we need to place the viewport meta tag. Okay. Now, the viewport meta tag here, again, I'm getting that error. This is one of those things that, go ahead and copy and paste. Typing that out won't really do you any good, right? So instead of grabbing this one, you can, let's say, go to this link here, the viewport meta tag on the Mozilla site, or you can go to the W3 School one. Right? Copy that one. Hopefully you have Dreamweaver opened already. Oh, look, there's a Bootstrap update in Dreamweaver. Remind me later, and then I'll tell you to remind me again, and remind me again. So what I'm going to do then is, up here at the top, I break things into, again, where my style sheets are, clump my style sheets all together. I have a tendency to clump all my scripts together, and then clump all my meta tags together. So in meta. And meta. And paste it there. Now, one of the meta tags that we are not using because do we care about this website being search engine optimized? No. But a little bit about how search engine optimization works is, if we go to, let's say, this website or this article right here, and let's say we put in 960 grid responsive, right? In other words, back 3 years ago, this search phrase, hey, how do I take my 960 grid and turn it into a responsive design? We search for that. And lo and behold, my article on the matter comes 3, 4. No, it's still not bad, right? So just kind of off topic a little bit, but something you would probably want to know. So this is called a search engine result. Duh. This is called a search engine result page. Duh. This right here is the title tag. For those of you at home, this is the title tag. This right here is the URL structure. This right here is the meta description. So in terms of search engine optimization, how does search engine optimization work? Selecting keywords that are appropriate to the business. Placing said keywords into the places you need to put them, like the title tag, the URL structure, the meta description, and body copy. So this right there then, and then to rule the search engine optimization game, you search over and over for that term, and then you go and click on it. That doesn't really do anything because it's the same IP address. I got one smile, thank you, right? So if I view page source, you will see here that I have the meta viewport, right? And I like using this option here for user scalable no, right? So that when you're geeking out on stuff and you do this when you're a designer, it automatically snaps. And then nobody does that. But at least you've cared and you've made it work, right? We have another meta tag, keywords. Now, unfortunately, well, let's say it like this. I probably should delete my keywords meta tag, right? In terms of search engine optimization, that was a meta tag that got abused. In other words, when grandma was searching for toasters, she ended up on websites that were not toasters. You understand what I'm saying? Yes. Starts with a P, ends with an orn. Okay? Then there is the meta description. So this is then the tag that if you want to care about search engine optimization, you should always have a unique meta description for each page of your website, each post on your website. Right? So I do that dynamically through WordPress. But one way, shape, or form, we have placed our viewport meta tag. So now when we are going to be viewing this on a mobile phone down the line, as we have our media queries in there, things will start to respond. Okay? Stage one. Yay! Stage two. Now, I go back and forth on this. Making your typography responsive. Well, are you actually making your typography respond? Meaning, are you making your typography expand and contract based on the viewport size? No, right? So we could still use pixels. However, pixels are, well, let's just say it like this. People will make fun of you. I don't know how else to say it, right? So instead of pixels, we have started going, so pixels are fixed width units. We are now going to be changing to relative units. So the first thing that we would want to do is,
so if you have a really, really super sharp screen, with pixels, you have pixel size text.
well, what I'm saying is, here's
Like why beyond being made fun of, is there a reason? Are we gonna get to some like future state of screen resolution that would make that obsolete or something? I don't get.
I read this once and it convinced me and I forgot.
So
I don't know how else to say it, right? Just do it. You don't want to be that guy, right? I don't know how else to say it. Like, in other words, basically what's happening is as we come in, right, your type is not expanding and contracting, right? It will, you can say at whatever breakpoint, I want my size to go up or down, right? So for instance, if we are at my business site, as we come down in size, the tagline there for the spotlight, when we get here especially, I change the size of the type at those breakpoints, right? So we're doing that with media queries. But look at the image, how the image scales as we're going up and down in size, right? So yeah, I don't really know how to answer that other than in this article, it's in there somewhere. And like I said, I read it and I was like, oh, okay, whatever. And then it went in one ear and out the other, and there we have it, right? And I'm sure you'll get other hardcore developers geek out and tell you the one thing that they've run into on mobile phones that you have to use M's and not pixels. And I'll say, yeah, sure, okay, that sounds great. Is that a lame explanation? I think it's a lame explanation. Okay.
Wonderful.
Huh?
Wonderful.
So basically what we want to do then is in our style sheet, we want to start changing our font sizes. So in the body tag then, what I want to do is say font size 100%. Okay? Now, when I say font size 100%, what it is actually doing is setting every piece of HTML text in every element to 16 pixels. Okay? 16 pixels then looks nice on if you're on your mobile phone. This text there will be nice and readable. So if you go down to 14 and below, it starts getting really small and unreadable. If you go up past 21 for body copy, it starts getting unreadable. So on a mobile phone, I think the readable zone is about 16 to 21 pixels, right? Then, in all the other tags, right, here's what we're going to do. And I'm just going to delete some of those comments that I've already done. So basically then, we have, if we have font size 36 pixels, right, what we want to do is use the Ethan Marcotte formula from our book that I had you guys get. So here's the formula. If I want this H1, and again, why am I pointing at the screen? I have no idea. Why don't I just take a nice comfortable seat here? Because when I then say and do this, you all know what I'm pointing at because it's up there on the screen. It's something new I'm trying to get used to, right? So if I want my H1s to be effectively 36 pixels, and I have said in my body tag, font size 100%, effectively saying 16 pixels, I want to say 36 divided by 16 equals 2.25 EMs. Okay, so where does the term M come from? Has anybody heard the term M square? Bounding box. Did we go over the bounding box earlier when we were talking? I'm not going to look it up on my site, but movable type, right? Gutenberg press, little metal blocks, the size of the M. That's the M square. Ah, yay. Okay. So, if I have my H1, 36, now I can leave comments to myself, right? 16 pixels. And I want to say 36 pixels divided by 16 pixels, right, equals so 36 divided by 16, it's not that I don't trust my own math, I'm just visually doing this on a calculator, equals 2.25. Okay, so we would want to say 2.25 M's and save. So if we go to the prototype that we've been working on, and we refresh and go to, well, our headline here is the H1. If we inspect that, yay, our H1 is now a font size of 2.25 EMs, and it looks exactly the same, right? Now, I go back and forth in terms of line heights, okay? Sometimes I will make a universal line height of 150%, okay? So that universal line height of 150% looks great for paragraph tags and block quote tags and list item tags, etc., but then doesn't look great for H tags. But let's just do it here, font size and line height, 150%, right? So basically, if we had a 16 pixel M square and we said line height of 150%, that equals the line height of 24, right? So, but our line height here for our H1 tags, right? You can do it however you want. I typically go somewhere between 100% and 125% for the headline tags, right? And here's why. If and when you are on an article like this and you're looking at it on your mobile phone, it is common then that this headline that needs to be very keyword dense for SEO purposes then becomes very long, okay? So the keywords that are in this headline: convert, 960, grid, website, layout, responsive, design, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 keywords, along with the fluff words A, 2A, etc. Okay? So here, if it then wraps like that, and I inspect that, and we've changed it now to, well, that's my prototype, or not my prototype, but let's go back. Where is it? This H2 tag here, I have a line height of 125%. Let's say if I went to 150%. Too much? Who says too much? Yeah. If I say 100%, too little? 120? Better? So I typically use 125. So we can go change now our font size. So again, if we have 32 pixels here, right? I'm not going to comment it out, but I'm going to say 32 divided by 16 equals. Now I feel stupid for using the calculator because it's a good number too, right? 2 EMs. Thanks. Somebody's with me. Somebody's like, yeah, you should feel dumb. Okay. I'm going to then go and play cleanup and just get rid of some of those comments. H3, again, 24. That one's a little more difficult. So 24 divided by 16, 1.5. EMs. Line heights, again, 125%.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
So you're using the N's with the M's and you're also using percents. That's just two different ways to do basically the same thing.
Correct. That's a good question. I just took that for granted. So I typically use, we could say 1.25 EMs here for line height, right? So I could have done 1.25 EMs. For some reason, that just doesn't compute up here for me. I don't know why, right? I could have done this as well. (225%). They're the same thing in terms of they're now relative units. So 2.25 EMs is 2.25 EMs, or 225%, so on and so forth. So yeah, good question. I just, again, set in my ways. I do however I do it. I've just been used to declaring the font size in M's and line height in percentages. I have no idea why, which one is better. I'm sure you'll get people that argue it, and we can move on, right? And maybe take a sip of water while we're at it. All right, so cruising down the page, we then have here, paragraph, font size, 16 pixel. How many M's? 1 EM. You guys are good at math. And do I have to declare 150% here? Yes or no? It's global already. It's in the body tag. So anytime that I have that line height now, I can just get rid of it, right?
Although on your website tutorial,
True.
you haven't put it.
I have this laying over here and I haven't opened it. Did I make you put it in?
Yeah.
Okay. Your call. What do we do?
I don't know, I just didn't know if you could read it.
Yeah, let's not put it in this time, just for something different. That's how I'm rolling these days. Okay, so going back to what I do is sometimes I look at my printed notes over here. Sometimes I'm looking at my notes on the screen on my lecture size. Yep, sure enough, line height 150. OL, UL, font size 150. So again, we don't have to, we could even not declare font size 1 EM there, right? We could say, well, we've already declared a universal, global, but somebody may look at that and think, oh, well, wait, what is it, right? So I'll leave it up to you, whether you want to do this or not, however you want to do it. And again, I'll leave it to you to look at that YMs, and it'll totally convince you that you should use M's, and you'll move on with your life. So now, again, if we go and preview this, right? Things shifted a little bit. I know what it was. On the list items, that's why I totally don't do it. On the list items here in the navigation, those are now set to 150 line height. You'll get the little, did you see how it jumped just tiny bit, right? So do we go back and change it, or do we just move on and think to ourselves, well, I'll adjust my design accordingly down the road? Number two, that's what I think. Next, what we want to do is, and I just closed my old, hold on, faculty, Washington. Make your website responsive. Okay. Look at that. I don't have the my about image in there in the demo. So what we're going to do is we now need to get to making our images respond as well, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make all image tags max width 100%, height auto. So what that is going to do then is and then let me describe the new box model at this point in time as well. Let me show you an example with the old box model and an example with the new box model. Okay. So if I set all images to a max width of 100%, that means, well, how big is this image? If I open image in a new tab, that image is 620, so it's perfect, right? If we go, let's see, to a newer one. Let's go to my blog here. And we go to this one. If you want to read an article on my theory of search engine optimization, especially how to optimize your site in the WordPress environment, I spent a long time writing this one. So somebody please read it. That's what I'm saying. Right? Feel like Jeb Bush. Please clap. So if I open this image in a new tab, right? This image is a lot bigger than it actually appears here, okay? If we come down in size and responsive, and go to 800 pixels wide, you can see all of a sudden it's bigger. So that image actually is it going to tell me how big that image is here? Image, no, it's not. Well, that image is 800 pixels wide. Because what I know is if I have a design here that the breakpoints where it, so here at 820 something or other, you can see that there's still the copy column and the sidebar column. But at 800 is the breakpoint then where I am then switching to the mobile navigation and the one column. Why 800? Why not 768? Does anybody understand my point? 768 would be the iPad in portrait, right? So have you all heard of the term ergonomic design? We typically think of ergonomic design as, oh, great, this chair supports my lower lumbar region, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, my take on ergonomic design is also, if I'm laying in bed late at night and looking at the Facebook, you guys do it too, right? Who's with me? On my tablet, I want to feel like it's a book and it's one column. So if at 768 I have two columns, that does not feel like a book to me, does it? All right? That's my version of ergonomic design when it comes to responsive design. How does it actually feel in terms of the device that I'm on, right? Your classic human-centered design and engineering philosophy, okay? So then if this is 768, Why did I choose 800 here? There is a link up at the top here that sometimes works and sometimes does not work. This mobile and tablet viewport sizes. It's probably not going to load. I'm really bummed because it shows you or kept track of every device known to man and their viewports. Okay, so why is that important? Well, there is another one that I found today to replace that one because that link is no longer working. Viewport sizes. And I didn't, let's see, there it is. There is a tablet that instead of 768, 1024 is 800 in portrait. So if I want to make things ergonomically designed, I can say by looking at this chart that 800 and below would be the good tablet breakpoint, right? Okay. So therefore, if 800 is that image, if we're here or even down below, that image then, what it's doing is now set to a max width of 100% height auto. So it will then go out to whatever edge. In other words, it is a child element at this point in time, right here. So if I inspect this element, this image right, has a max width of 100%, height of auto, and this is where I'm using the border box, right? Because, so this is the one using the newer box model. And why I'm using the newer box model is I want the padding and the border to be on the inside versus the padding and the border to be on the outside. So back before I knew about that new box model, and here's the thing, you will be tempted to, every time you discover the new evolution of what you should be doing, there's the real temptation to go back and change every project you ever did to be that newer technology. Who knows what I'm talking about? Don't fall for that. You will not have a life, right? You will have no social time whatsoever. So here then, this image then, oh, this one I did change to border box, didn't I? Because it's the flex slider. Ah, never mind. Let's just move on with our day and do the new version. So we can say then all image tags box sizing border box. So again, padding and borders will be on the inside now. So that if I say max width 100%, it won't then bleed out of that because of the padding and the border. Does that make sense? Because if I said image size 100%, and then you add padding and border on it, it's going to come out of its containing element. Box size, border box. Notice what we're saying, not width 100%, but max width 100%. Height. Height. auto. Why max width 100%? If the image is 800 pixels wide, and I say width 100%, it might go more than 800 pixels wide. It'll grow, it'll expand, right? So I want to say max width where it'll only go out to whatever, how big it is, and it'll shrink. That's the same thing that we're going to start doing with our major page division elements. Okay? Does that make sense in theory? Okay. So now we got that in there. Let's place our image. So I didn't do this in the prototype. This is something that I've added. So I then want to, you can use whatever image you want to use, but to prove to you that I did graduate this program, I have placed this for download for you. Again, use whatever image you want to. You can use this temporarily, right? Save link as. Wait for the pinwheel of death. School. 532. 532. Oh, come on. HTML 2016. Images. There we go. Save image graduation. So again, image graduation. Remember to put that up to your server. Underneath the about headline, image, SRC, image graduation, open. Alt. Seriously, I don't need you to remind me about updates during lectures. Alt. Wrong one. But. Yay, there it is. Okay, so let's put a class on it. And again, I'm probably deviating from the script, but you know, whatever. Class. Content, no, let's just do class image. Okay. I go back to my style sheets, and underneath the image tag here, I am going to say img with a class of image. Border 1 pixel solid purple. And I'm going to go back up to, did I put that? That's our purple right there. So our UW purple, and I'm going to say padding. Let's do it 10 pixels just so I can show you the box sizing border box issue. Okay. So again, this image, when we downloaded it or when I opened it up in a new window here, open image, a new tab. This image is, I don't know, 800 pixels or so. It's bigger than our 620 column. Let's say it like that, okay? So, therefore, if now we have said, and I can close, no, I don't want to close that one. So now, if I've said, right, image size max width 100%, that means that it is going to shrink according to its parent element. So its parent element right now is a width of 620 pixels. So that image then is, because it says max width 100%, it is then going up to 620 pixels and stopping. However, if I turn box sizing border box off, and in the content, I turn my background image on, look what's happening. So this is the traditional box model, where from here to there is adhering to its parent element, 620 pixels. With the traditional box model then, the padding and the border is outside of that. So how do we compensate that for that traditional box model as we shrink and grow and scale? We would have to calculate the width of the padding and make it a percentage, and the border as a percentage. A 1 pixel border you cannot calculate as a percentage, right? Or just a border you don't generally calculate as a percentage. So along then comes the savior, the Messiah of, seriously, this was the responsive designer's Messiah. Ask anybody who's done front-end development for responsive and ask them how they feel about box sizing border box and if they know the traditional box model, and they will chew your ear off it for a long time. So now that I put box sizing border box on there, the padding and the border is now inside. So the 100% is the image plus padding plus border. Does that make sense? Again, to quote Thomas Wilburn at the Seattle Times, again, if he's watching my video, he's not watching my video. He has better things to do. But shout out to Thomas Wilburn for saying that this is one of the things that Internet Explorer got right way back when. This was their, from what he told me, this was their original box model. And Firefox or Mozilla and Netscape lobbied for the other box model, right? As far as I know. Or I'm just making stuff up because I heard it on the internet. I don't remember. All right. So that is make your images responsive. So far, so good, right? Now what we need to do is start making our layout responsive, okay? So this is the thing. Right now, our main elements, and what I mean by our main elements are our header, our navigation, our content area, and our footer. So again, if we go back to the page layout example, right? Our major page divisions Our header, our navigation, our content area, and our footer. Those eventually are, if we go to the prototype that's been completed, those eventually are going to scale in as our viewport changes, right? So we can do, so if we go to this lecture, the one that I wrote on my business blog, responsive layout with media queries. So at our desktop screen set to above 1024 by 768, our typical desktop layout, we want to change the parent elements to be a max width. We could keep them at regular width and say at below 1024, change it to a max width, but it doesn't hurt to change it to a max width at above 1024 because it's only going to go out to that max width and no longer, okay? So let's do that to start out with. And again, I'm just going to start deleting the comments that I've, or the things that I've commented out. Header instead of width, max dash width 980. Navigation, max dash width 980. You guessed it, content, max width 940. I'm not going to delete this because this is what I turn on and off to see the grid. Footer, max width. So now we should see as we scale in, we should see our main content elements now start to scale in with it. But my machine is getting pretty hot. Should start bringing my chill pad with me. Does anybody have a chill pad on them? You know what I'm talking about? So as we come down below, again, 1024 or the 980 mark, right? Our content area starts to scale in. But notice that when we get to a certain point, our sidebar snaps and disappears, right? This is because at this point in time, our children elements of text and sidebar are still fixed width. Well, at above 1024, that's fine. Looks totally normal. But at below 1024, that's where we start wanting to scale in the children elements as a percentage of the parent element. So what do I mean by that? So this diagram here is the diagram of our little prototype that we're building. Okay, so we have a visible width of 980. We have an actual width of 940. We have padding 20 on our content area. Our text area then has originally been set to 620. So it goes over, 8 columns. Our sidebar was originally set to 300. It goes over 4 columns. So as we come in scale, we want then the text area and the sidebar area to scale in as a percentage as we get below 980 up until a certain breakpoint. Okay. In other words, if we're looking at the original prototype here, the one without the image in it, how you say no man's land in here. In other words, $900 something pixels, 8 something, right? That's kind of the no man's land between desktop and mobile. However, if you are on a 1920 pixel monitor, or if you're like me, right? How many of you, as you're even working on your desk or your laptop, take your browser screen and move it in like this so you can see your other windows that you have open over here to the side of it? Does anybody do that? Right. So we want to account for that no man's land, right? So therefore, what we want to do is the similar math that we did with our typography, meaning this element is 620. It is sitting in a width of 940. 620 divided by 940 equals 65.95 something percent. Okay? But we only want to do that at a certain breakpoint. We could do it up, in other words, we could do it up here in our original code, contents, text and sidebar, but I've encountered a problem with that. And you know as well as I do, if you ever encounter some issue that goes wrong for you, you never do it again. Or if you do it again, shame on you that time, right? So I had the experience, I had an issue with doing that above 1024, converting things to percentages for the child elements and some of the imagery. I had some weird gap issues here with my background images. I may be one of the only people that's ever experienced that because of using responsive imagery for background images, meaning how this is working right here is this image here is a content image set to a max width of 100%. In the middle div tag, what we're calling our content div tag and what we're doing is a repeating image, right? In the footer then, is another background image. So those 3 images come together as the top of the box, the middle area that contracts and expands, so therefore there's a repeating image in there, and the bottom of the box, right? So you can then have those images as you come in scale along with everything else, right? So if I then go to the middle div tag here, we can see that the background image here is set to a size, background size 100%, so that it scales in with everything else. When I did the percentages at above 1024, meaning we could, instead of still we could change things to percentages up here as well. But again, I experienced some weird things, so I am going to leave these two children elements here, text and sidebar, at their fixed widths at above 1024. But now we are going to start saying, okay, what happens below 1024? And this is where we would want to start saying with our media queries, media, screen, and max width, 1024. So in the CSS world, I'm going to make my CSS style comment here and say desktop below 1024 pixels, right? And this is where I'm going to go and open this so I don't make any typing errors. And I'm going to say at media, and as soon as I do that, it turns red. Screen. So I'm saying only media of screen, not print. And space. Two parentheses, open and close. Max. Dash. Width. Colon. 1024 pixels. And then I'm going to open and close another set of brackets. Okay, so essentially what we're going to start doing then inside these brackets here is, this is where things are going to start changing at below 1024. So we're going to start then by what? You should have just come up here and type that. You just said, did move over. Changed it, right? Thank you. So yeah, what we want to do then is say, and we don't have to type this out again because we already wrote it once. Let's copy our text and our sidebar ones. Put them down here. So now we're starting to say, this is how the cascade again will work, right? My text, my sidebar, still floating left, still floating right. Hey, we don't even need to say that anymore. We'll change that eventually, but let's do this. So this is where we want to do our math of 620 pixels divided by 940 pixels. So let's say it like this. Why 940 and not 980? Why 940 and not 980? Right. This padding is outside, so this is where the traditional box model, right? The traditional box model is referring to the content from here to there. The padding and the border are outside the box model. Okay? If we want to change the then padding here, we would say 20 pixels divided by 980 equals 2.04. Okay? But let's say, again, 620 divided by 940 and 300 pixels divided by 940 pixels. And this is probably all we're going to get to tonight. Okay, but we've already kind of gotten to a lot tonight, yeah? Let's say so. So, $620 divided by 940 equals 6.595 blah, 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 blah. Or, well, we could copy that and paste it there, call it a percentage, and move the decimal. Or we can just say 65.95. Okay. Same thing. 300 divided by 940 equals 31, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Change it to a percentage. Move the decimal. Remove the 0 in the decimal. And then just round it to 2. So now, at below 1024, here's what's happening. Where is it? Where is it? This tab. Don't forget to refresh. Now, so you may have made a typo. And what I know is this. I think somebody did this one year. Now let's see if it works. Make sure it's at media, space, screen, space, and in parentheses, max width, colon, space, 1024 pixels, no semicolon. Opening bracket, closing bracket. Inside then, so this is basically a sort of if condition brackets statement, right? Just like the PHP and the JavaScript. So I'll leave this up on the screen there for you. And that's about what we're going to get to tonight. And then next week we can go below 800 and then do our toggle menu.
I floated right navigation isn't disappearing.
So let's see. So if I refresh this, your navigation should scale in.
Yeah. Go to the bottom. Okay. I guess I thought you were disappeared.
No. It should be scaling in like this, right? And then what we're going to do next week is below 800, we're going to fix this. And this is where at those breakpoints, you have to then evaluate your design and make design decisions. right? So what we're going to do is at 800, we're going to get rid of our rounded corners and move our logo over a bit. And then at 600, we are going to push this down underneath and have those both go out to 100%. And then we're going to do a toggle navigation. And then that'll be the whole class. And then if you ever want to keep in touch with me, you should add me on Facebook. And I always take messages from students, right? That's my hotline. But anyhow, why don't we stop there for today? And again, maybe Victoria is watching this live. Maybe she's not. If she's watching it live, bye, Victoria.